Welcome to No Clip, the podcast that's like a book club for people who don't think that books reward them enough for being good at them. I'm Chad Ruthermond.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today, we're going to be talking about Disco Elysium, a game that was developed by ZA/UM, or ZOM, as I've been pronouncing it probably incorrectly, and was released in 2019 on Windows and Mac OS, 2020 on PS4, PS5, and Stadia, and in 2021 on Switch, Xbox One, and the Xbox Series X/S, which I believe now coincided with the release of the Final Cut version of the game, which is what we played.
Yep. But first, if you give us a like or a rating, it'd be greatly appreciated.
And so we're going to start with what we should really just codify as a recurring segment of the show, which is fucking Chad and Andy talk about genre. Because Disco Elysium is an RPG. But, and I would claim this is an argument that I make, but I don't think anybody disagrees with me, is that RPG is far too broad of a term to use to describe anything. In a very non-pretentious way, this game is not an RPG in the sense that if you're like a RPG fan, you will like, nobody would go, oh, I heard that you liked Final Fantasy. You know what game you'll love? Disco Elysium.
Yeah, I don't think like RPG would be one of like the first three genres I would call this game personally. Although it is obviously taking a lot of cues from RPGs, mainly CRPGs. But yeah. While playing it, it feels more like just like a narrative game. Like it feels more similar to playing like a point and click or something to me. Just in like how it feels to play.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I found myself struggling for a while to place it within a genre, and it really was just me going like, I feel so much like I'm playing an adventure game that it it seems like it isn't really what it actually is. But it is an RPG, and after doing some reading, evidently it is based, its like mechanic system takes a lot from the game Planescape Torment, which is not a game that I've played and know very little about, but
yeah, it's one that I want to play really badly because I've heard like great things about it, but I've never played it either.
Yeah, so how does playing this game, reflect on your desire to play Planescape Torment? Do you think it increased it or decreased it?
Probably increased, I think. I definitely enjoyed my time with this game. It's very dense, so you're definitely going to have a lot of time set aside to play it. But I'm definitely just as even more curious now, I think, to check that game out. Because I know it's got like a really weird setting that it mostly enticing me to play Planescape.
Yeah, for sure. I also find myself in that boat. When I read that there was a game that this game took heavy inspiration from, it made me immediately go like, I have to like start breaking down in my head like what are the things that I like and dislike about this game, and are they likely to apply to a totally different setting? And I'm not sure. I had no desire to play Planescape Torment because it's an old CRPG. Which are things that I'd avoid for whatever reason. But I don't know. There's something mechanically about this game that speaks to me pretty heavily. I liked a lot of the things that they did with this, just in terms of making it a fun to go through experience.
Yeah, it's like they took... It feels like really like stripped down, like design by subtraction, I think. Like that you take like it really focuses in on like skill checks. And that's basically like the main RPG mechanic, is that you have all these different skills you can level up, and then you use those skills to like pass certain checks, like to get information and things like that. And then yeah, they kind of just like put it in like a more contemporary kind of like mid 20th century kind of setting, and yeah, you end up with like a really unique feeling product.
Yeah, definitely.
As a result.
Yeah, my initial thought process when I was playing this game was like, this is very obviously created by people who are in the like boutique-y TTRPG space, like the people who would buy a game book to play in a role-playing setting that has like unique rules and a focus on these like obscure skill checks and like political machinations. I was like, this feels like something that I would buy a book from a Kickstarter to own.
Yeah, like Electric Bastion Land.
Yeah, which we had just played recently.
And apparently you had to have a weird evocative title like that. Disco Elysium, etc., etc.
That is definitely true. And Disco Elysium is a great title. Though odd, for sure. But yeah, I think I want to focus in on we do this on every podcast. We're like, let's talk about the mechanics, let's talk about the narrative. And for a lot of games, they are separate things.
Or at least it's easy to break them down that way.
Yeah. This is not going to be so easy. So hopefully what that means is a nice fluid conversation from one into the other without a very noticeable break. But what it also means is this game is a dialogue based game, and so everything that you do in it is going to be in some way related to the narrative or the goings on. So the interesting thing mechanically about this game, it comes in the form of its skill system. And I made potentially the incorrect phrasing already this early in the podcast in saying that the game was fun to play, because that is obviously not the goal of this system, is to be fun. There are parts of it that are supposed to be funny and it's engaging, but the game is pretty bleak, all told. And so when I say fun, I think my actual like feelings on it are deep, maybe, or customizable in a way that I enjoyed.
Yeah, you tend to really like things that are like cleverly written, I think. Like I knew immediately you would really appreciate a lot of the dialogue more than the average person probably would.
The average bear.
Yeah. Joanne and Cletus.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. And the dialogue works on the back of these systems in a way that is like fascinating to me from a like design and programming perspective. Because what happens in this game, and it took me a while to kind of suss this out, is that the game is just constantly running checks in the background that you aren't privy to. There are a few important things that you will get the opportunity to roll for in the form of the white and red checks that are selectable dialogue options. But constantly, while you're receiving information, the game is saying, like, does this information spark a memory? We'll check against encyclopedia. Or, like, do you read more into this? We'll check against empathy. That kind of a thing. And the fact that the game has, 20 skills? 21 skills? Something like that?
Somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah, like a huge number of... it couldn't possibly be 21. I don't know where that number came from, because there's 4.
Like, maybe 25.
Yeah, it would be between 20 and 24.
It's like 4 rows of 5 skills.
Okay, then it would be 20 skills.
I think.
Yeah. It's like, you really have to choose where your specializations are going to be. Or if you don't, then you get this very, like, vague sense of everything, as opposed to a really acute understanding of specific things. And I really like the way that that's set out. And they give you the option at the beginning of the game. And I know what you did, but I chose to start with an empathetic character, a psi, I guess, focused character that who's like the default version of that character. Their signature skill is Inland Empire. And I know that you chose your own.
Yeah. When I started it out, like, I knew so little about what the game was actually like. And I just felt like all the descriptions felt like so vague. And like, I just didn't feel like confident about picking any of the pre-made choices. Right. So I just made my own. And I picked, encyclopedia as my main skill, which I was happy that I did.
Yeah.
It felt very helpful early on to have that.
Yeah, I will say later in the game, I ended up artificially increasing my encyclopedia a lot because I felt like that skill came in handy more than I anticipated it at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, and as I progressed, I kind of just tried to feel everything out, like, based on the kinds of situations I was running into, like what skills felt they'd be the most useful. So I kind of like spread myself a little thin at first and then zeroed in on the things that seemed the best to me.
Yeah.
So I ended up with like a logic encyclopedia, like I think it's visual conceptualization or something. Like those were like some of my favored skills.
Yeah, there were a lot of things that I ended up looking up in this game. I did a lot of reading, like post-game, for this one, which is something I normally don't do, but I felt like there was a lot in this game that I could have been missing. You can have Kuno as a partner, which I found absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, that's skipping to the end.
Yeah.
But
but I only learned about that today, and it's something that I wouldn't have known if I didn't look stuff up.
Yeah, same.
But to sympathize, I was frustrated at the very beginning as well, looking at the reason I basically had the same feeling and then the opposite reaction is I was also frustrated by the vagueness of the descriptions of the different character archetypes and just decided to trust that the ones that they had set up would be reasonably competent. And then that I would be able to sort of further it myself. And then that also gets compounded with the existence of the thought catalog, which we'll get into later. But you can really gobble up a lot of your skill points doing fuck all, really. Like, I had a few skills that had a lot of points in them, like Half-Light, that never really seemed to, like, jump to the forefront at any point. Like, it would chime in often, but rarely was there like an important check or like a need for the skill that was like tangibly felt by me as the player. I don't know if
full agree.
Yeah,
there were certain skills that seemed like they just like were very niche. Yeah, and I tended not to put points into stuff like that,
including weirdly the health skills, volition and endurance.
Yeah.
The sensitive pre-built character starts with 4 volition and 4 endurance. And with one exception, like midway through day 4 for me, there was almost never a time that I felt like I was going to be killed or lose all of my health. And at those times, I had double digits healing items. And I don't think this game benefits from being difficult in the sense that you could die at any time.
Yeah.
But it really takes the sting out of like the options that actually do cause you harm.
Yeah, I had a little string of bad luck because I also just kind of ignored the health and endurance. And I had one little stretch where there were like 3 different things like right in a row that you could interact with and hurt yourself, and I did on all 3 of them and died. And that was the only instance. It was like trying to lift the barbell.
Yeah.
Then there was like a door in the next room you could knock on until it would hurt you, and then another thing in the next room after that you could kick and it would hurt you, and I did all 3 of those things and died.
Damn.
But yeah, that was just very bad luck or negligence on my part because I could have healed myself.
Right.
But I was so used to not worrying about it.
Exactly. Yeah. I would like often not think about it. And then like when I would, at the time that I was discussing happened, there's a scene in the church that you can get under certain circumstances where this like unbearable sound will start to play. And I remember getting hurt down to like 1 morale. And even at that point being like, do I even want to use a healing item? Because I'm just going to go right to bed after this. And like, I did do it out of an abundance of caution. And because I had just a literal mountain of psychoactive drugs in my possession, I was like, I might as well heal. But I didn't really need to. It was a strange setup, I guess. I don't know. But I mean, maybe that's the way we played. Maybe there's like a much more violent version of this that you could do.
Yeah, I feel like there's some circumstances. Like I think it just depends on like I know what's the name of the big fat guy, big communist man.
Oh, Everard.
Yeah. There's like I know you can like die to him. Like I like in reviews people will kind of refer to him as like a boss fight, basically, because he can do like a bunch of damage to you.
He makes you sit in a chair that is so uncomfortable that it hurts your morale.
But like I don't think I took much in that. You know, like it's very. I think if you pay attention, it's pretty easy to avoid like taking much damage.
Yeah, and I think it also comes down to sort of like how you go about doing things. In that scene with Everett, I had tons of healing items already.
Yeah.
But if you're not the kind of person who scours and like picks up everything on the ground, maybe you don't have enough. Maybe it will actually be difficult to make it through.
Yeah.
But there were multiple situations in the game where my character broke down sobbing in front of other people, which does damage your morale. But the fact that that was allowed to happen without me ever being in any actual mortal peril is, to me, calls into question how useful the 2 health bar system is.
Yeah, it like kind of like what I was talking about before, where I got unlucky. Like that was kind of like a criticism I had, but I didn't know like how situational this was, that sort of thing can happen. But like it did kind of feel like the game was punishing me for like interacting with stuff, like because like most of the time, because like early on, like you can talk to Kim like right when you start out the game, and you have a bunch of stuff you can ask him, and there were certain things I didn't because I didn't want to look bad, and then those just sat there, and like by like day 4 I'm like, should I like ask him why he's following me even though we've been partners for 4 days, like, you know, to see if it does anything, you know. So you end up with weird things like that where like sometimes you're rewarded for just asking everything, and sometimes you're punished for it. And it's kind of weird. So you try to play it intelligently, and then when you don't have any leads of what to do next, you're tempted to go back and ask that stuff. And sometimes you get hurt for it. And sometimes you're rewarded. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah. I think my version of that same criticism is that when you're playing this game, it seems like you want to make intelligent decisions about what questions you're asking. But there's no indication as to whether you're looking at a menu or a set of options, where it's like, which I realize are essentially synonymous, so please let me go on. There are times when you look at a list of questions and the game intends you to ask all of them. Or at least like some number and then choose to move on. And then other times when you select an option and that is your locked in
and then it moves
thing.
on.
Yeah. And it's more obvious in some cases than others, but the question was always there. And also there are times when I would choose something thinking that it was an option between 2 things, but then it wouldn't let me move on until I asked the other one as well, which felt weird from a role-playing standpoint because it was like, this isn't what I wanted to say. I wanted to say the other thing and then move on, and felt like it had a lot of finality. The end of the game was really bad about this for me.
Yeah, it feels like kind of like they want it to feel a little unpredictable. But like, yeah, because I think it would be easy to like color code the text or something to make it clear when it's going to move on and when it's not. But it seems like they didn't want to do that. Like, I think it does want you to keep you guessing for better and for worse.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is what its like design goal is, and there's probably going to be a few other questions of what their goals were as we go on.
I just think it wants to like make you take everything seriously. Is like what they're trying to accomplish with that, if I had to guess.
Which is funny because this is But so we mentioned the game probably taking inspiration from Planescape because they mentioned it. And when playing through this originally, like the perspective and the tone and everything, I kind of came in thinking like maybe I'll make comparisons to Kentucky Route Zero here.
Yeah.
In the end, the game that I feel this is the most like that we've played is actually West of Loathing. Strangely, it just is a game that very successfully uses comedy to express its like the point of its setting. And I found that a lot of these dialogue options were very much like railroading you into making it so that their jokes landed.
Yeah, sometimes.
But I think overall probably fairly positive because the writing is so good. Like I'm glad to hear more of it, but that I think that did lead to a lot of situations where I was like, this sounds like a thing that an idiot would say.
Yeah.
So I'll choose the less dumb option.
Yeah, and I also had some friction, especially early on, because like the beginning, like the very beginning, like where you like basically are brought back from death's door, was like so effective to me that I'm like, I'm gonna play the character like a fucking straight edge. Like I'm getting his life back together. God damn it! Like, and there's so many options seated in there to go the exact opposite direction and to like be really silly and drink and do drugs and like, you know, be like eccentric and like a sensationalized, like hyper fictionalized version of like an alcoholic or whatever. And I just did the exact opposite. So there kept being like a bunch of like things that you could ask people that are just like these goofy off the wall things that I would just never pick.
Yeah.
And sometimes would have to pick and it would be weird.
Yeah, it just like doesn't feel like it's within your in the game's terms, your capo type. I found it actually there was a specific moment I'm trying to remember. It was when I was talking to Joyce, the union leader, for the first time.
Who was very suspicious. I was always very suspicious of her.
That's
anyway,
fair.
Continue.
Yeah, and the game rightfully does cast further suspicion on her. So, but in the first conversation you have with her, Kim pulls you aside beforehand and is like, so you are kind of a wackadoodle lunatic, so we're gonna lean into that to throw her off balance. So try and get her on the back foot with your questions, and then we'll hit her with the stuff that makes sense. And it felt like a tutorial in a way where it was like, just pick whatever the fuck you want, and the game will just roll with it. And there's even a tooltip in the loading screens that comes up on occasion that says like, people are going to be more accepting of the things that you say because you are a cop. And I did not find that to be true.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
It seemed like if you picked the wackadoodle lunatic option, then people would treat you like an escaped convict.
Yeah, no, people called you on it immediately a lot of the time.
Yep. So it became really difficult at times.
And it felt like everyone knew that you'd been there for days and were like a out of your mind lunatic who sold your gun. Like everyone knows you don't have your badge or gun or anything. So I felt like if you tried to like just everyone would call you on your bullshit if you tried to be goofy. Yeah,
like almost instantaneously.
Yeah.
And so I found myself in this situation where I thought the only real option was to lean into it. As I mentioned before, the Kappa type that I leaned into the hardest was the Superstar Cop, which was fun, and I enjoyed doing it. But yeah, it feels like nobody really takes you seriously for the whole game. Except during that one glorious moment where I sang karaoke and fucking ruled ass at it.
Yeah.
So there's that, I guess. This is what I meant when I said everything sort of blends a bit. Because we started this with the many skills in the game.
Right.
Which I want to jump back to. Because I found the delineation between the different skills to be really motivating. And something that I wanted to explore. I mentioned this to you off cast, but if I were starting the game over, I think when I had this realization, I was probably like 12 hours in or so. But I probably would have wanted to put fewer points in the physicality stat and more into motorics, because a lot of that shit is just mechanically very useful. And a lot of the stuff in physicality made me hate myself. The physicality stat is the one that houses shivers and half-light and electrochemistry, which are the voices in my head that I wish I could stop hearing.
Yeah, I didn't put points in any of those.
Yeah. I hated them a lot. Not a lot, nor hated. Let me take it back and go back to the beginning. I think Shivers is incredibly clever. It's like a skill that allows you to sort of like hear things that are happening outside of your field of vision if they have an impact on the city. And that is a cool thing, but I felt like every one of Shivers, beautifully written, takes forever. It is always very wordy, very verbose. And then Half-Light, like I mentioned before, never seemed to really come up in a way that tangibly felt real to me. It was just like a lot of fear that was being put on me. And electrochemistry just interrupts you every 3 seconds to tell you how great drugs are. And I think it's because I had like a middling electrochemistry. Like mine sat at like 4 to 5, depending on my equipment, for most of the game. So it was really big on the engage with addictive substances route, and less so on the know how to identify and deal with substances, which I think is what like a high electrochemistry would do. So it was really odd. Those ones really fucking wrecked me. And on the flip side, I thought interfacing, reaction speed, and hand-eye coordination were all very cool when they showed up. So
I didn't put points in any of those either.
I put a lot of points into things in Motorics. It was like a bunch of Motorics, a little bit in it was in Logic and Encyclopedia on the intelligence tree, and then pretty much all of my other points went into Empathy, Inland Empire, and some of the other stuff in those zones.
Yeah,
I think Physical Instrument.
Yeah, mine was kind of like a graph where like we just like went down like in a like the top row was the most, then the next one was second most, then the third one was third most. Like it kind of went like down like that. So most of my stuff was clustered up in the top right corner.
Yeah. What were your starting stats? Like the numbers on the left?
I don't remember.
You can go up to 5, I think, as a maximum in anything. So mine was like 1, 5, 4, 2.
Yeah. Like I don't remember at all.
Yeah. It's something I thought about a lot because it's one of those systems that I engage with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. It was something that I was always thinking about, but then I also dove pretty deeply into the thought cabinet. So, like, I never had anything that was over 10, except for perception, because I completed a thought cabinet thing that just gave me a permanent +3 boost to it.
Nice.
Which was nuts as far as, like, being able to, like, boost it higher and higher. And I passed, like, every perception check in the game after that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if that's all you...
Yeah, like, for me, like, I just kind of engaged with it on, like, a more... Like I said, I was just kind of feeling it out kind of basis. This is, like, I put points into whatever I thought was good, and then if there was anything... Like, got to a point in the game where, like, 2 checks were locked behind empathy, so then I just put a point in empathy. Like, it always was, like... I put this stuff in that seemed valuable, and that worked out. And then if anything new came along, I was just able to put a point in it, and it worked out.
That's fair.
So yeah, like, I didn't really engage with it on that kind of like on any kind of like deep like, oh, I need to like figure out like where to put all my points kind of way. I just kind of like went with the flow with it.
There's one other thing about the leveling system that I wanted to mention that really stood out to me. And I'm curious if that, the way that you described it kind of sounds like you engaged in it in the way that I liked.
Mm-hmm.
Which is whenever you level in this game, you get the point, but you don't have to spend it. So you can just hold points and walk around with them. And if you encounter something in dialogue that you would need a point to do, or like put points in something to retry a white check, you can just stop right there, go in, put a point in the thing that you want, and then go in and do it that way. Did you hold on to points, or did you level pretty much immediately?
I don't think I ever held on to points.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. We played very differently.
Yeah. Like it just felt like you got them frequently enough that like, cause like I also got to the point where in the library, like you can break down the door behind the curtain. I didn't realize you could talk your way in. So I just put 3 points in it. It felt like it didn't even take that long to do. And then I was able to break it down. Like it just like, there's so much, like once you get to like, especially after day 3, when you open up the coast section, there's so much you can just go do that like you can just like, oh, I'll put this off until I get the stuff I need and come back. And it usually feels like it's got this nice like kind of natural pacing to it, where if like you've run into a roadblock in one place, you just go do something else and come back later.
I feel like I agree with that mostly. My point of difference here is that I always wanted to hold off until I found something before I actually committed the point.
Yeah, like, I never even like thought
to do that.
Yeah.
I will say I usually use the points pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Within a few minutes or maybe an hour or whatever. But at the end of the game, when it gave me the like, you can't come back, point of no return thing, I checked in my stats and I had 5 unspent points. And was like, should I go do some other stuff?
Yeah.
And I would say 9 times out of 10 I would have, but as we'll get into a little bit later, I was pretty in the mood for the game to be over. So I ended up just getting on the boat with 5 unspent points and then using them on the island to actually solve those problems.
You know, I do think it's really cool that you can do that. I never would have thought to do it personally, unless I got like multiple at once, which did, I think, happen at least once.
Yeah, I don't think that I would have ended up with 5 unspent if there wasn't like one of those big narrative conversations where you're hitting checks all the time.
We've mentioned a lot about the different like skills and how they'll like chime in to tell you stuff.
Yeah.
Like this game is so dense with narration and dialogue, and it's all voice acted. Like the amount of voice acting and just writing in this game is like kind of astonishing. Like you compared it to West of Loathing, and I think that is a good comparison. In my eyes, because of just like the amount of like narrative depth that it has. Like it just keeps going deeper than you expect in a way that I found just like really impressive.
Yeah. I also want to at least briefly mention this. The voice acting was actually added in the Final Cut version.
Oh, wow.
The original version had voiced lines of introduction. So your the fuck does Kuno care would have been voiced, but then the rest of his dialogue would have all just been text.
Okay.
And then when they released the Final Cut version, I looked at the list of changes. Literally none of them are like even 1% as impressive or important as the voice acting.
I knew that the vision quests were new to the Final Cut version, but didn't know about anything else. So.
Which I'm not even 100% sure I found. I don't fully know what a vision quest is, so I may have not done any of them.
Yeah, they do have like specific requirements to do, so
I may have just missed them.
Yeah.
Damn. I'll maybe have to look that up as well. But to your point, though, yes. The writing and the... yes, 1,000 times yes. The writing and the voice acting is absolutely insane. The script for this game has to be, like, novel length.
Yeah, I want to know how long it is. But yeah, no, and God, what was I just gonna say? Something about the voice acting. Oh, okay, I got it. And yeah, like, imagining playing this game without the voice acting is kind of like, feels like just like monumental difference. Like, I feel like it takes it from being like a game that a lot of people could get a lot of like enjoyment out of in different ways to something that would be hyper niche. Like, I feel like sitting and reading that much dialogue, like you would play the game for like, or at least someone like me, I feel like I'd sit down to play the game, play it for like a half hour and be like, wow, I'm mentally exhausted. Like, I'm going to go to bed now.
Even as it stands right now with voice acting, I found this game to be mentally exhausting. But
yeah, at times.
Yeah, but that's something we can get into. The voice acting does absolutely lend so much more just inherent playability to this than it ever would have been without it. Like, it does feel like a choose your own adventure set of encyclopedias is what it would be with no voice acting. But people played and liked it at the time.
Yeah.
But I think that it appeals to a really specific kind of person, where with the voice acting, which with very few exceptions was all very good, really brings it to another level and made it very appealing to me, somebody who does not want to sit for 100,000 hours and read 1,000,000 lines of dialogue.
I guess I think an interesting thing to talk about is, like, to backpedal a little, like, what were your first impressions of the game? Like, starting out, like, the first day, I think, is very specifically laid out and designed to, like, make you feel like you're not making any progress. And I was just wondering, like, what you thought about, like, the first couple hours of the game. Because I feel like a lot of people pick up this game, well, probably, like, I don't know when it came out or when the final cut came out, it got, like, some attention, and I think a lot of people tried it and were off-put by the beginning, and I'm just wondering what you think about, like, the early hours of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also want to come back to the game not making you feel like you had a lot of progress, but I want to answer your question more in earnest first. Because my initial prospects on this game were definitely different than how I ended with it. Where I had this feeling of, like, I'm going to go in, because I went in pretty much blind to this game. I knew very little outside of the opening, like, 5 minutes coming in. And I was like, I'll go in blind. I'm just going to go with my gut feeling on everything and kind of roll through in what I can perceive as the most natural way possible. And immediately the game put up a bunch of stuff in front of me that I just had no idea how to handle or deal with. So it became much more of this, like, poking and prodding, like, trial and error system to get to, like, understand the tone of the game and the situation. And I love to death that when you meet Klasja on the first day, my character wanted to making fuck with her or whatever, and they bring that back up and throw it in your face on, depending on when you do it. For me, it was the end of day 3, where I suddenly had to interrogate her, a character that I hadn't seen or thought about in over 15 hours of gameplay.
You actually can see her up on the roof when you walk by. Yeah. But
Yeah.
anyway, continue.
Yeah, I guess I did see her.
Yeah.
But I didn't make the connection in my head. So it was, to me, this game felt like a puzzle box at the beginning. Like, I had no idea what I was doing, and it never really makes you feel like you're solving the mystery until you get pretty deep into it.
Yeah, no, I felt similar. Like starting out, like I just remember feeling like, how much do I focus on the body hanging on from the tree out back of the hotel? I'm like, should I be wandering around? Like, should I go down this street? Should I go over here? Should I be like opening up these new side quests or whatever? Or like, should I be focusing on the solving the mystery of the hanging? Like, that case, like, am I gonna solve the case like by the end of the first day and then have another case to go do? Like, it does feel a little puzzle boxy, and like you have to kind of you have to like you unfold it as you go. Like, it isn't immediately apparent like what the game is gonna be.
Yeah. I right now, and I don't know exactly how your thing played out, I had a similar thought process where I was like, okay, we have the hanging, we have all this evidence or whatever.
I didn't know if I had all the stuff nearby to solve it, or if I should have to go elsewhere and have to come back to this later.
Yeah,
is a better way to put it.
No, it's true. And yeah, Kim says early on in the game, like, gotta go talk to all the locals and figure out the lay of the land and stuff. And the game immediately presents you with, like, there's tire tracks outside of the courtyard that he's in. The fence is broken. There's footprints underneath of him, and then obviously the corpse is there.
And
Kuno's throwing rocks at him. There's clothes in the dumpster, which is not a difficult thing to get into. So there's all of this, like, what feels like very important evidence laid around on the crime scene. And by the end of the game, I got what is, according to the wikis, the best ending. But I didn't know who the killer was at all before I met him.
It's supposed to be that way.
Yeah. But you're supposed to have, like, I think that there was supposed to be
I'm just
clues.
saying you didn't, like, miss something.
Right, yeah. I'm saying that I personally, like, I didn't know where the shot came from and all of this stuff that, like, supposedly would lead you to the island. It was just handed to me at the end. So the game presents itself as this, like, crime-solving mystery game, but very quickly it becomes like a clothes collection mini game type game that I just wasn't expecting.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, Kuno felt like a huge curveball to me because he's like one of the first characters you'll meet, and it really bothered me that he just kept throwing rocks at the body. It's just like, this seems like a problem, and like me being me and thinking logically, I'm like, well, first thing we should do is get him to leave. But that's not an option.
Nope.
And that, like, really bugged me. I was like, there's got to be something to do with Kuno here. Like, I kept coming back and talking to him and getting nowhere, like, just no new options. And, like, I'm like, it just felt like a thing that that needed dealt with that you just don't.
Yep. And there's
maybe it was a personal weird hang-up I had, but...
No, it isn't, because it's that girl, C.
Her too, yeah.
Who's over on the fence, and, like, she has different dialogue if you talk to her from the front of the fence or behind the fence. And it's like, there's so much going on with those two characters that it does feel immediately like you're like, we can't have him just throwing rocks at this thing all day.
And Kim is, like, very casual about it. Like, it's very... the tone of that is just weird to me.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to sort of give you the idea that, like, this isn't police work in the way that you think about it.
Yeah, or, like, just how shitty this place is, that no one cares that this kid's just throwing rocks at a dead body. No one cares that the dead body's there.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to drive that home, but, like, I feel like it doesn't quite get there.
And also, I know that in my report that I filled out in the dossier, that the rocks were being thrown at maximum velocity, because I just went along with whatever Kuno said for the most part. So yeah, it definitely, he felt like very important, and that the game was just like, fuck you for thinking that you could do anything about it. I felt the game felt kind of fuck you about a lot of stuff. This was, I guess, like, shout outs to Andy Kinnick here.
Thank you.
Potentially since Return of the Obra Dinn, the best mystery May game by theming. Like, it felt the most like an actual mystery. I felt like I was doing a lot of detective work actually, where I was like uncovering things and piecing things and creating theories in my head, in a way that very few of our like mystery themed games end up doing. And Obra Dinn is the only one that ever really gave me that feeling outside of this. So, yeah, it's weird how much the game pushes back on your ability to solve the mystery and how much that actually makes you kind of want to keep doing it.
Yeah, like I feel like the potential for that is there, but like for me, it felt like there was just so much information thrown at you that I couldn't remember like half of it.
Well, and that's where the mental exhaustion comes in.
And felt like I did not at all come close to solving the mystery on my own. But for much smarter people, it's definitely there, the potential for that.
And I mean, it depends on what kind of information you're getting, right?
Yeah.
Like, I retried the visual calculus check on the window to do ballistics like 4 times over the course of the game before I did finally get it. And when it gave me that raw information that you probably would have gotten fairly easily with a higher visual calculus base score, I immediately was like, I don't know what to do with any of this. This is just information I now have. And it opened up a thing to check the shoreline for all of the different places the bullet could have been shot from, but I was only ever able to access one of those things. So, like, it didn't go anywhere. So, it did feel like the stuff that felt like natural, actual mystery-solving things weren't what was helping me in any way.
And it does feel like pretty quickly the actual, like, solving of the case is put on the back burner, and like the political stuff and a lot of like there's like the supernatural element of the Pale, which is like super interesting to me anyway. It's just thrown in there, and there's like cryptozoologists, and it's just like a bunch of interesting, like almost kind of like Twilight Zone type stuff creeping in there. That seemed to take up like the bulk of the focus of the game in the middle.
Yeah. It was, and I was personally shocked to find that the supernatural stuff was real in the context of the game. It actually does have like a surreal or magical realist sort of like angle to it, and B, that some of it was important, because I engaged heavily, and you fucking know I mean very heavily, with the cryptozoologist like quest line. I finished every fucking one of them, and at the end of the game I had the heavy pheromones to talk with the insulin phasmid, and I was ecstatic at the fact that that came up and was a real thing and was also like a key part of the ending of the game. But just didn't think that it was going to mean or do anything. I was very willing to believe in my heart, in Chad's heart, not Harry Dubois, that all of it was just bullshit that they put in the game for flavor purposes. But I enjoyed myself with it a great deal, and was tickled to death to see that it actually came up. I got way less of the Pale than I think everyone else on the planet did. And I'm curious, like, if they did that intentionally as, like, a stat spread thing, where, like, if you have a higher intelligence score, you get more Pale, and if you have a higher psi score, you end up with more, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you finish the church quest line? Like, the rave
Yeah, I got
thing?
to that. And I don't know if I finished it. I got to the church, I got them into the church, and I got the big booming thing.
Okay.
And I also created the new wave of anodic dance music.
Right.
And also I danced my ass off.
Yeah, I don't know how much more there is about it, but that's like the big, I think, like dump of information about that. from what I understand. It comes from that quest.
Okay, I may have missed some dialogue at that point, because I know about the 2mm hole in the world, but did not know that it was related to the Pale.
Oh yeah, it is the Pale. Actually, it's like a new area of it forming in that spot, and it's gonna like expand as it like sucks in stuff.
Fascinating.
Yeah,
I bought the book about the Pale, but all it did was try and teach me hangover remedies that I couldn't get the ingredients for.
So yeah, I didn't. Full transparency, finish the game, so I only know this because of a review that I watched. But from what I understand, like that's where that information comes from, and it does probably depend on what your stats are, like how much information you get from that whole all the dialogue options you get in that quest.
Yeah, I just had Half-Light chime in a million times going, you should leave and never come back.
Yeah, and there's maybe other places where you can get people will talk to you about it, too.
Yeah, the Pale thing was like...
It's basically like the Nothing, from what I understand from the Neverending Story, if you're familiar. Where it's cool how it ties into the themes, where it's kind of like it's a... like sci-fi concept, like a personification of the idea of like people who forget history are doomed to repeat it. Like it's like it literally sucks in knowledge of the past and stuff, and like kind of like blurs it in like from people's memories and stuff.
Okay, that tracks more. I think I maybe just didn't have a name. Like I didn't think that it was the Pale, because we had that book talking about the Pale that wasn't very informative. I had the character that I remember as a character. Hold on. Ruby, who is setting up this like special radio I remember some of these proper nouns and other ones are going to go out the window. This is one of those. But some kind of like special radio broadcast that supposedly has something to do with the Pale. But in my playthrough, she killed herself, so I didn't get much more information from that. And then at the very end of the game, talking the shit in the church, and then also talking to the Phasmid about like the human existence potentially wiping out all life on the planet. I initially read as like an environmental message, but I honestly don't think that's how it was intended. But I think that also has to do with the Pale and the way that it is. But I'm not, at this stage, even sure really what the Pale is like metaphorically standing in for, if it is anything. So, it's interesting. It's not something that I'm qualified to comment on.
Yeah, it's a weird thing to seem like it's so significant, but be like, and a lot of information on it is in the game, but it's like hard to come across.
Yeah.
It's like, it's weird how it's like woven in there.
Speaking of weaving things in, do we want to have our two halves of conversation about this and join them together by weaving in a break? All right.
Kuno don't give no fuck about no break.
Welcome back. We made a discovery during the break, which was I now know what the vision quests are, and I did in fact get one, but did not complete it. And it also ties into a minor point that I wanted to bring up. So let's talk about those at least briefly.
Yeah, I think it's on the third day you wake up, you get a prompt, and then, at least for mine, I had to like ask Kim about it, and mine was for the moralism vision quest, because I'm ever the moderate Andy Kinnick.
The game will make fun of you for being a centrist, so that is just a thing. Mine was the ultra liberal one, for savoir faire, wanted me to become an art dealer, which is unusual, but also confusing because the game, I ended up with the options within the game to internalize 3 of the different political ideologies. The first one that I got was for fascism. The second one was communism, and then the third one was moralist. So I actually was never prompted for the ultra-liberal, like, actual, like, thought cabinet thought. But that was the vision quest that I received. So I'm not really sure how it determines, or, like, maybe just that day I happen to be feeling mighty ultra-liberal.
Maybe there's, like, a specific trigger or conversation or whatever that unlocks the thought thing.
But the one that I had was to buy a piece of art from Cindy the Skull and then find a buyer for it. And according to the dialogue in my head, the buyer was going to be in that shipping container at the dock that you can try to open using rhetoric, but you have to crit in order to succeed. And I never got there. By the time I had gotten the painting from Cindy, it was so late in the game that the dock was locked off to me. Or at least I thought it was. I didn't actually go check. I may just have not been able to talk to Everard. But they were like, the strike has locked up the dock, and I was like, okay, I won't even try. So I didn't get to see it to its conclusion. I don't know what the moralist one is, though.
I mean, similar for me. Like, I didn't actually do the whole thing, but it was started. But I did look up what happens in it, though. You end up having to work with Suna, the woman in the church, and she helps you. You learn about this from the guy, the Sunday evening friend, the politician or whatever he is. He tips you into the existence of the moral intern, which are like a secret society, and then you get Suna to help you turn the big statue, the guy on the horse, into a radio tower, which you then use to contact them, and then you can talk to them about like a number of different things and get like a bunch of lore dumped on you.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't look up what the end of my quest would have been.
And I think you can tell them about the 2mm hole or whatever, the cone of silence or whatever it's called. And I think that can affect the ending. But don't take my word for it.
Exactly. Find out for yourself. We're free thinkers here on the No Clip Podcast. Yeah, I don't know what selling a fucking credit card sized painting to somebody in a freight container would have done for me or affected the ending. It seems like nothing. Maybe it would have gotten me $1 million, because I know that that's what the point of the quest seemed to be, is to make a bunch of money. By the end of the game, I was certainly not short on cash for what I needed it for. And they put money on the island at the end with seemingly no conceivable way of spending it, which just made me more confused. And regret slightly that I didn't buy more dumb shit, because I had like 50 or 60 real to end the game.
I bought almost nothing, personally.
I did for a long time, but I took up the free residence option as soon as I could.
Yeah, I didn't. It felt like I taking advantage of the old lady, so I didn't stay in the shack.
Saving 20 real a day on that.
It's very tempting, but I just didn't do it.
Yeah, so I ended up buying the track pants from Kuno, and I got some great shades from the street vendor who's selling shit off his lorry.
I did get some shades from him.
Yeah.
But I bought some alcohol for $3 instead of $300.
Oh, the spirit?
Yeah, the spirits. Yeah.
That is a quest that I looked up later. It relates to the necktie that you start the game with.
Oh God, that's another thing I wanted to talk about. At the beginning of the game, and potentially throughout more of the game, but your tie will talk to you, and it relates to one of the skills.
Inland Empire.
Inland Empire, which I didn't put any points in. And for me, I think it talked to me a grand total of 2 times ever, which is really weird. Like when you like, cause like I didn't know that that's what that skill did. It was like basically let you talk to inanimate objects and stuff. So I was just like, what the fuck was up with the tie that talked to me twice? It was really weird.
Yeah, my Inland Empire being my special skill, ended up, it floated around. I didn't put points into it, but it floated around like between 6 and 9 over the course of the game. Nice. Because of equipment and all that stuff. Your reward for completing the cryptozoologist quest lines is a new tie. The tie by default gives you +1.
Isn't it like a bolo tie or something?
Yeah,
I got that tie.
Yeah, and it gives you a +1 to Inland Empire and also to Volition, so it's basically a straight upgrade to the talking tie, which is apparently why I did not finish the quest that had you buy spirits for $3.
Yeah, I bought the spirits and then didn't do anything with them after that.
Yeah.
I didn't finish it either.
Yeah, because I thought, like you probably did, that it was alcohol that you could drink. But
I thought I was sell it to the other guy who asks you to give him alcohol and he'll tell you stuff. The guy who's sitting right next to him.
That guy never asked me to buy him alcohol. So.
Oh, yeah. He's like, if you try to ask him for more stories, he's like, asked you to give him booze.
Interesting. Yeah, I never did
so,
that.
Yeah, I thought that's what it was for, but he doesn't take it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it is just like a quest item, and I guess you put the tie into the bottle of spirits, and then something happens, but I don't know what.
You can make it into a Molotov.
Maybe.
I actually found this out from the video I watched.
Interesting.
You can use it in the little scuffle that happens outside of the hotel.
Yeah, I was definitely wearing the bolo tie at that point, so I did not know about this. That's interesting, though, because that scuffle went about as badly as it could have,
Well,
I
it's
guess.
supposed to go bad.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what happens, you get shot.
That's good.
So.
Yeah, well, in that case, maybe it went as well as it possibly could have, because I got shot and warned Kim, and he did not get shot.
Yeah, that's where Kim can die, and then Kuno will be your partner if he does.
Yeah. Which is lame, because I like Kuno as partner as a joke.
Yeah, it's very funny.
But Kim is absolutely my waifu of this game.
No. Kim is my guy.
Kim
Best
is
supporting character from 3 years ago. No Clip Awards goes to Kim Katsuragi.
Yep. Fuck. Oh yeah, we were talking about buying shit. That's not really that important. I did, yeah, but no, I took the free room and then ended up spending money on all kinds of other stuff. But the thing that I wanted to ask you about, actually, is because you mentioned that if you don't have the 20 real on the first night, something, or not 20, it's like 100 and some
130.
real. 130 real. Something happens to clear your debt. What is that? Because I did not know.
Kim pays for it for you.
Oh, nice.
He has like these hubcaps in his car that he's fond of that are like expensive, and he pawns them at the pawn shop and gives you the money for your room. So you feel bad.
Yeah. I'm glad I got to avoid feeling bad.
Yeah.
I just begged Joyce for money.
Oh, yeah.
And she was like, okay. And gave me the money.
Yeah, I you get the option to ask, like, most characters for money, and I never asked any character for money.
I got money successfully from Joyce and the street vendor. I think that is all, but I may have begged more people. I don't remember.
Yeah. I basically tried to play, like, as I said in the first half, I tried to play Henry as, like, a straight edge, basically. Like, he was fucked up so bad that I had to, like, get him back on track. I got to sober him up. And then I also kind of played, like, I have to make Kim proud, basically. Like, I tried to, like, just be, like, very professional cop most of the time. So I never begged anybody for money.
Oh, so were you the boring cop
I actually
type?
don't know, because I remember they, like, tutorialized that, and then I just never looked at it again. So I have no idea what my coppa type was.
Right. They tutorialized it in my form when I was I was given the thought cabinet thought of rigorous self-criticism because I was a sorry cop. And I looked at the thing and I internalized it to me to be like, now it's time to, because I didn't know this was being kept track of, to gun as hard as I can for Superstar Cop for the rest of the game. And so that absolutely took over every fiber of my being to make sure that I was not a sorry cop anymore. And then Boring Cop sounded boring.
I probably was Boring Cop.
Yeah, and then Apocalyptic Cop seemed like always the worst dialogue option. So I just didn't do anything with that.
Yeah,
so
I feel like it was
Superstar
like
Cop
really
sort of slotted
small in like the corner of the screen, wasn't it, where that was written?
Yeah, it's on the like notebook screen.
Yeah, I feel like I just never looked at it.
Speaking of things that I never looked at in the notebook screen, did you buy a map?
No.
You can buy a map, and then you have a map. It's not super helpful.
Yeah.
But it does allow you to fast travel.
Oh, wow.
Between 3 places. It's very... I used it. It's not the most useful thing in the world, but it's also something that was added in the final cut.
I actually am glad that I didn't know that, because I am known hater of maps.
It's true.
And fast travel when the game world is small enough to walk around. So
the map is interesting.
I would have liked it if it passed time, though, when you fast travel.
It does not.
Oh, okay, then never mind.
Like, you wanted there to be, like, some reason to do it.
There's the bench that exists, and if Kim's not with you, you can use it to pass time. I wish you could just do that when Kim was with you, too. There were multiple points where there was, like, an appointment at a certain time, and, like, I just was out of other stuff to do. And I just had to, like, go back and just talk to people, because the time doesn't pass if you just let the game sit.
Right.
Which I thought was kind of annoying in a few places.
A tooltip recommended buying books to pass time, and that is what I ended up doing.
Oh, can you read them and it passes time?
Yeah. So you read the book. It doesn't just passively pass time, it just initiates a dialogue.
Yeah.
As you actually go through it. Like, I've read there's a mystery novel you can buy for the fictional police detective that they call you in the 41st Precinct. It's like Dick Holden. That's not it. That's just a funny joke I told. Whatever it is, it's Dick something. And if you read that book to the end, you're supposed to guess what the ending of the book is based on the information it gives you, and then after you guess, the book falls apart and blows away in the wind, so you never get to know what the actual ending was, which I thought was cute. But that kills like hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on your choice. So there are a lot of like ways to pass time, I guess.
Yeah.
But I felt that, especially early on, where I was just like, well, I can't afford a book.
Right, yeah.
It's like $6. I have $0.
I can never afford to buy anything because I'm staying at the hotel.
Exactly, yeah. So that didn't even come into play until the 3rd day. I had a minor point related to the Vision Quest that I wanted to jump back to. That isn't really related to the Vision Quest. It just manifested itself there.
Sure.
Every time I went into a room after accepting the Vision Quest, either the room at the hotel or the shack, that Vision Quest bubble was just permanently there.
Yep. Like when you sit up from the bed. Yep.
It's infuriating and just was a constant reminder of how miserably inefficient the Switch port is.
That's actually my first note and was like waiting for a good time to bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
It's extremely rough, yeah.
I ended up getting it on the Switch so I could like play it in class. But
I have an amusing anecdote about that when we're done here.
Oh yeah, and regretted not getting it on PC. Because like it doesn't run horribly, but like it's just awkward enough that like like there was this one where the strike is happening. There's the staircase and like what is his name, Manana?
Yeah,
or whatever
call me Manana.
Is there. where it's so awkward to walk on those stairs, like without turning around and walking back up them halfway.
It was the hardest boss in the game.
Yeah, and I found that if you hold the stick like up and to the right,
Yep.
it's the way to do it to make it work. This is a universal experience.
Yeah. I was like, there's no way he's gonna. It's like when I showed you that thing in the Pokemon remake where it was like impossible to not jump over the ledge. I was like, he's just gonna be like, no fucking way is it hard to walk downstairs, you idiot. I'm glad to hear you say it.
Yeah, because like it was like I think we talked on what's the name of the game?
What do you do in the game?
The one, Oxenfree. In that where you were talking about, you played that on the Switch, and you found the controls to be weird, and then I played it on PC, and they weren't at all, because you could do the clicking, and you could move with WASD or the arrow keys. So if you ever was like kind of stuck, you could just use the other mode of control, and it would just like totally alleviate any of the issues. I imagine the PC version of this is similar.
Oh, almost definitely.
Yeah, and it's just like a non-issue.
And just for context for everybody listening, Andy and I both are, I would go so far as to say, extremely forgiving of technical issues.
Oh yeah, like me even more so than you.
Yeah, probably.
And it's my first note. So,
and if you're somebody who's sensitive to that kind of a thing, this game has like serious audio stuttering issues.
Oh yeah.
Anytime that there was like weather happening.
That actually, I feel like only happened to me like the first couple of times I played. There were like weird audio things, and then it stopped happening.
I played this game mostly in like 8 to 10 hour chunks.
Oh yeah. Like there was like one part where I was playing, and I actually forgot about this because I think it was like the first time I sat down to play. Like all of a sudden, the dialogue was just like super loud. It was just like regular volume, and it was just like Kim talking. It was like, bruh! I was like, what the fuck is happening? And then it never happened again. It was really weird.
I never had that. I had, anytime there was like wind or rain, the music would start like stuttering out.
That didn't happen to me.
Yeah, and I had on 2 different occasions a situation where the camera panned. And then just didn't come back.
Yeah, that happened to me early on as well. I completely forgot about that.
Yeah.
It was like I think it's at the end of day 1. I was like outside of the hotel, and the camera, like I think it faded into like some kind of like dream sequence, or like with the body and or whatever. And then when it came back, like the camera was just like either it was like in black, or like I just moved and it didn't follow my character or something like that.
Yep.
It was wild. But then, it never happened again.
Yeah. That one happened to me twice, and the only way I could solve it was by quitting the game and restarting it.
Totally forgot about that.
Yeah. So there's definitely some technical issues with the Switch port of this game. I don't know if it applies to other console versions. But yeah, if I could go back and do it again, I'd probably play it on PC.
Yeah.
Which actually, let's say that. Would you play this game again? Because I think it wants you to.
I think I absolutely would, but I would want to wait like a couple years.
Yeah.
Both like to just forget stuff, and because this game is a lot. You know? But like I know there's like a ton of content I didn't see. So I think it would be fun to play it again.
Yeah, I feel similarly but different.
Yeah.
In that there is a lot of stuff I didn't see. And I do feel like this game is a lot, and if I did play it again, I would want to wait a significant time before going back. But I feel like knowing more about the game and knowing sort of where the story can go would make me like this game a lot less.
Yeah.
And I don't think that even in a few years, given the opportunity, I would play it again.
I'm the kind of person, though, that's true for me about like any game.
Sure.
Unless it's like a pure gameplay kind of game.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough, but yeah. But I mean, I guess that's a glowing review in some respects, that you would play it again theoretically.
Yeah, and there's just a lot. It's just so dense that like you could play it again and probably get like a third new dialogue you never heard before.
Yeah.
Like, easily.
I'm just gonna turn this on real quick. Hopefully it won't make a bunch of noise. And actually check here. Because... yeah, alright. This is another game that I want to call out our best friends at howlongtobeat.com. Where, unlike with Diddy Kong Racing, where I felt like it was a very optimistic read on how long it would take, like if you were good at the game. This game, there isn't really challenge in the sense of like dexterity where you have to like be good at it. It's all just sort of navigating dialogue options, and with the very rare exceptions of dying, you're not repeating content. How long to be for this is like 20 hours, and I spent over 40 on this. This game is intensely long in a way that I couldn't really put my finger on at the beginning. I was like, this seems like it would be 20 hours. And then 20 hours later, and I was still on day 2, and I was like, how did this happen? How am I still on day 2? Or the beginning of day 3, wherever I was at 20 hours. Did you feel I mean, I understand that it's us, but did you feel the burn with this one?
Yeah, I think it's less to do with its length, because like and it depends on like the kind of game, because like there are certain games I'll play and I'll put in like 60 hours and it feels like nothing, and there are others like that will be like 12 and they'll feel like they were long. So I think it depends on the kind of game, and for this, like, I think it's the fact that it's so dense, and like how we were talking, like it can feel exhausting, like just getting so much information and feeling like you have to internalize it and think of like how you can use it and like who you can now go talk to progress story. Like it can be very like taxing, I think, to play at times, and I think that's what makes it feel like it's so long. But yeah, I don't know. It did feel like for me, like ideally this game would be like, yeah, I would cut out like a whole day from the runtime. And I think it would maybe be a little bit better if it was like some fat was trimmed out of it, personally.
Yeah, it feels like almost like it could probably go down a day without even changing much, because it what it would do is it would put a lot more importance on the things that you chose to engage with.
Yeah, and make more stuff optional.
Yeah, because I ended up doing like I found Ruby, I did the whole interrogation with the Hardy Boys, including the back and forth with Klausja, and I did the church quest with the kids, and I did the fucking cryptozoology quest, and just all of these things that feel like these big meaty things, and having me just miss one of those, I don't think would have been the end of the world. I would have been, my curiosity would have been piqued and just unfulfilled, and it would have actually made me want to maybe go back and do it.
Yeah, like I know that the church quest line is strictly a side quest. Like you don't have to engage with it at all to beat the game.
Yeah.
And yeah, like some kind of like, I don't know if you would want to signal it, but like, I don't know, making it like feel more obvious, like what's the main quest, I guess.
Yeah, stuff
Would
that
be
actually like
nice.
puts you on the right path to the end, so that you could get there in an efficient way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I think I found myself doing those things often because I didn't know what else to do. Did you lose Cam at any point during the story? Did you send him to do whatever?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was, though. I think it was like on the second day he left to go do something.
Mine was also the second day.
Yeah,
so
and I
it
don't
could have been
remember
the
what
same.
it. Yeah, what do you remember what it was?
It was taking the body back.
Oh yeah,
to the morgue.
Yep.
Okay,
That's what it was.
they
Which I found out, and I thought this was cool, that you can actually not take the body away and instead put it in the bear freezer.
Yes.
And keep it around until your skills are high enough to examine it and like actually find the bullet in its throat, which I thought was like super cool. But I didn't find my way into that building till the 4th day, so
Yeah. I got the body down on the second day and also managed to get in and put it in the freezer and then immediately passed the hand-eye coordination check, which we're going to talk about something, and it's called being a filthy, scummy, dirty piece of shit cheater. I got lucky on the hand-eye coordination check and just rolled well and got it and figured out where the bullet was. Did you, at any point in the game, and I'll say before you go on your answer the question, I did do this. Save scum. Did you save and retry a check?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay.
It's actually something that, like, I didn't even think about doing. Because, like, most checks, or it's like, oh, you could just do it again later.
Yeah.
So it never really seemed like that big of a deal. But I did think about it. Like, later on in the game, I would save before interactions, but then never actually ended up reloading. But yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't think about it too hard.
I only started engaging with this on the fourth day.
Yeah,
and I know for some people my credibility is already gone, so I'm just gonna keep rolling.
No,
with it.
I think the fact that it has so many save slots is encouraging you to do that.
Yeah, and a quick save system also, which is a bit functionally useless in most games. But if you just quick save to then go back and do a check, that seems to be the reason it's there. But it was particularly for intelligence-based checks that I just really fucking wanted to get, because there's a limit to how many times you can retry something if your intelligence score is 1. It means you can put a point in that skill one time. And then eventually I discovered that if you smoke and increase your intelligence, and then put a point in, you can retry the check, and you keep the point, which is what I was a little unsure about, because the point is temporary, and will fade over time. But apparently you do just get to keep it. So my encyclopedia score was actually just at base 4 at the end of the game, because I just used that trick multiple times. But then I started save scumming the int checks, because I was like, I don't want to go through the hassle of, like, I would have to go buy cigarettes and then come back and then smoke them and then put a point in. I'm wasting points and time at that point. But yeah, I don't know. I was curious because the game does seem set up for it. But I also didn't engage with it for the longest time, and then it was just like near the end of the game when I was like, I really want to get this stuff right. But then I think they anticipated it and made the shootout take a million years.
Yeah.
Because I considered going back to before the shootout, but my save was half an hour before.
Yeah, that seems intentional.
Yeah. I was like, well, never mind.
Yeah. It's like, same thing in Metal Gear. About, like, resisting the torture.
Yep.
If you fail to it, you do not want to go through the whole sequence again.
No, absolutely not. It takes, like, fucking 30 minutes.
Or more.
Yeah. Intense.
Yeah.
Oh, I did have the funny anecdote.
Sure.
About why I bought the game on the Switch.
Yeah.
And also, as a bit of a explanation as to why we didn't do more episodes, I would love to say because Disco Elysium is the longest game ever made, but it was because we just had a lot of shit going on in May. Everybody that we know is getting married this year, apparently. And I ended up being at a beach house for a week, which the irony of playing Disco Elysium at a beach house is not lost on me. I was definitely living the upper class life at the time. But I got it on a Switch because I was like, well, I'll be gone for a week, but I could probably sneak in some time to play Disco Elysium. And I did. I managed to, but it very quickly made me not want to do this because I was in a house with people who were just sort of milling about. It was a day that we didn't have a lot going on, so people were spending their afternoons in however they saw fit, and then we would reconvene to party more in the evening.
Mm-hmm.
And I put Disco Elysium up on a TV and was playing it, and occasionally people would just stroll in and like look at the screen and see what I was doing. And this whole time it was just the long ass race theory from Measurehead. And I was just so embarrassed the whole time. I'm like, there's a lot more to this game than this. But the speech goes on for like so long. Of him just being like, your ham sandwich race. And I'm like, oh my god.
I feel like that's so obviously satirical, though, that...
I think with the greater context, but like... And also, these people didn't know who I was, and I wasn't like, playing some kind of weird,
sure,
fashy game.
I feel like if it was me, I would not have even thought for 1 second anyone would think that I was playing like a racist game. But...
Look, you never know.
You don't, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But that was my experience playing this on the go.
Yeah, no, I definitely regretted getting it on Switch because I also got it because I was like, oh, I can play it in class, which I barely did.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to a bachelor party because everyone we know is getting married, and I was like, oh, and even though I know better than this, like. You always think you'll have time to do stuff like that on vacation, but you never do.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, I could play on the trip, and I didn't touch it. My Switch did not come out of the case even once, so I should have just got it on PC.
Yep, it would have made everything a lot. Hey, maybe it would have taken less than 40 hours because it wouldn't have had all the lag and slowdown. But yeah, I don't know. That's what I got.
Yeah, well, you want to talk about the actual end, like who the murderer is?
I sure do.
Because I thought, as I mentioned, I noticed on probably like the second day that you can see, what was her name? The woman? Klastja, on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like right after I had learned about the existence of Ruby, although I didn't know her name yet, or who she was. And I was like, it's going to be her. I was like, she's going to be like the murderer, or she's going to be like tied in. Because, like, she's up there. We met her on the first day. She's going to be significant. I was like, aha, I felt so smart. And then was surprised when she wasn't. But I was correct that she was important, and the game wanted me to forget about her. But I didn't. And she also, her portrait looks like Laura Dern.
It sure does. I had the same thought.
Yeah. But, so I didn't actually get to the ending. I got about, like, 20 plus, maybe about 25 hours into the game. Which is a big good chunk, but I didn't get to beat it. And so I saw the ending, and I was wondering, as somebody who actually played through the whole thing, did you find the reveal that the deserter was the murderer to be like kind of anticlimactic or like unsatisfying? That it wasn't a character that you'd met? Like a little Deus Ex Machina-y?
Right. I don't disagree with that. And I think that under different circumstances, I probably would have. I kind of got the impression from the ending that I was at fault for not being able to piece together, like, more about it so that it didn't come as quite a surprise. But I agree. I think that there definitely could have been further implications, like the tie-in that Klastja has to the deserters, that he was sort of like fixated on her, and that's why he killed the merc, was because they were together.
Mm-hmm.
And you really get everything that you can out of her, or at least I tried to. And in the end, the fact that like it didn't like never got clued in that was something that could have happened because he stayed completely hidden from her. It's like, yeah, the more that you talk about it, the more I'm like, yeah, they probably should have put something in there.
Yeah, and like from once again, did not personally experience it, but from what I saw online, like you didn't have like a different experience that most people have. Like I think they like barely foreshadow it.
Yeah.
And they just kind of comes out of nowhere for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's no other way to get to the island.
Yeah.
Like, you have to wait for the boat and take the boat there. and that's basically when you learn anything. Like,
Yeah.
you can't even talk to the kids about the island who tell you about the fireman or whatever who lives on the island who yells at the kids for starting fires. Like, that even would have been something to grasp onto earlier. Like, there might be a squatter or something.
Yeah.
And that just never comes up. Like, it's just not available information to you.
Yeah, it seems like the game, like I said this earlier, and it really feels like the game not quickly, but like over time becomes not about the case or the mystery and more about like exploring like the themes of like kind of surrounding your main character of like failing over and over and not giving up. Like, I feel like a lot of characters tie into that theme, and the deserter is kind of like the exact opposite, like somebody who failed and has just kind of lived in it for the rest of his life and let it control him. And which is, fair. Like, that's always nice when you can tie in theming like that. It's like very like symbolic, like almost Star Wars-y, like dark side, light side, like you put your villain the exact opposite of your hero.
Right.
But yeah, it just, I don't know, feels kind of, I don't know, maybe poorly considered, at least in my opinion, to like not have the reveal of who the villain is like set up or introduced like better.
Yeah. I am curious as to what information I could have gleaned from Ruby had I managed to talk her down from killing herself. But even with that, like, knowing now what the end of the game was, I feel like she wouldn't have had any further information on the guy either. It would have probably been more on the Pale, which is a totally different sort of thing. And, like, yes, you can make an argument that everything in the game is connected in some way or another. The Phasmid is, like, the reason that the guy is the way he is. Because of a pheromone that is excreted, and even that being like a supernatural explanation for part of it feels Deus Exy, as opposed to Day of Sexy, which it is not. And so it, like, I don't know, it kind of does compound. When you take everything together, you're like, boy, I wish I could have done more of that. But I think that's, I don't want to give the game more credit than it deserves, but I do want to at least shout out the fact that this is like this game has outward political machinations in it. It is about politics in as much as they relate to the player character, and even in its politics, it does not give clear answers. I'm probably not well versed enough to like go into any fine details on like what it is saying specifically about different modes of politics, but the fact that everything in the end is sort of like there are villains on all sides of it, like no matter how you look at it, like
everyone is sketchy, basically.
Yeah, it's a very equal. What do lame comedians say? It's the equal opportunity offender.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Of a game when it comes to this kind of thing, and I don't know. It feels like there's all these things that tie together into something, into a narrative, but it isn't about the actual case. Despite me earlier saying that the mystery part of it kind of really worked here.
Yeah, no, I feel like the ending kind of serves more like their message more than it does the narrative. And I don't think that was the right call, personally.
Especially as somebody who hosts a podcast that does Mystery Mag.
Yeah.
You gotta get that narrative, that mystery narrative in fucking line.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that in the end, like, I liked the ending mostly because of the cryptid.
Yeah.
And just sort of the sensation of wrapping things up and having Kim there and having him not be shot and dead. And I got accepted back on the force, even though I kind of wish that the door was open to become a cryptozoologist. That would have been my ideal ending. Like, it felt satisfying in the moment, but if you wrote it all out and then told it to somebody, they'd be like, that was it? Like, there was
Yeah.
no fucking, what about all that other stuff?
Yeah, it wasn't like the girl in the convenience store.
It's like, that turns out not important.
Yeah.
Do we have intrusive thoughts?
Okay. My intrusive thoughts are, this game is super dense. When I sat down to make notes on it, I was like, I have no idea where to start. Yeah, it's jam-packed with narrative, voice acting, dialogue, etc., etc. And I think I said on the first half, like, it combines like this kind of stripped down like skill check RPG system, combined with like an interesting like more contemporary setting, and you end up with a really unique package, I think. And I think it's really easy to be drawn in, at least in my opinion, if you're not off put by like some of the ways it tries to make you feel like you aren't making progress at the start. I think the world's really interesting. The skills, like talking to you, like it can be like it's wild to think just how much is going on under the hood. Like, any different little interaction can have like so many of the different internal skills, like talking to you, and it's just really impressive. Like, it's a game it's hard not to be like impressed by. And I find that sort of thing really interesting, at least at this point in my video game playing career. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. There were times where it felt a little exhausting, but for like the most part, it's intriguing, it's engaging. I really like the characters. I enjoyed like trying to uncover the mystery, and like anytime like a new area opened up, like when I first opened up the dam or the lock or whatever it is and got to go to the coast to like exploring the new areas, was always exciting. So yeah, this game really worked for me. I do wish it was a little bit shorter given how dense it is, because it did make it a little like hard to like want to keep coming back to, because you just think about it and you're like, oh, it's late. It's almost kind of like trying to read before you go to bed if you're too tired, you know? But yeah, overall, like, very positive. I really like this game. I'm glad that we went with it this month. It ended up being a great mystery May game, and definitely a unique experience. Like, this definitely will be a game that like I continue to think about, I think. And so yeah, those tend to be like my favorite games we've done for the podcast in retrospect. So I yeah, give it a big thumbs up.
I'm so hot and cold on this game that you could apply me to your muscles to relieve soreness. This game was exceedingly long, and I do hate it for that. The game is also not really fun in the sense that games can be fun, and it's a really bleak sort of thing. But it is invaluable to the sort of unique vibes that it puts out. I forget what Noid calls them. Signs. I synced signs with this game at some point midway through, and well, I probably did early. The game really impressed me early, but then it took a while for me to want to engage and proceed with it. It was a hard game to pick up, like you said, because it was so tiring to play at times. Like, it's a fascinating game, and it does a lot of things, and I appreciate the insight that it gives into sort of people and humanity. Like, the way that it sees everything is a valuable perspective to have. It's also definitely the most unique game that we've played this year, and I don't really see too much else coming to overthrow that. I might feel slightly differently if I'd played Planescape, but I have not. So to me, this seemed like a really novel system of mechanics. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of agree with you on that. I think this is a game that I'm going to be thinking about a lot, even though it isn't a game that I really want to be playing anymore. I really enjoyed my time with it, and I'm extremely happy to have actually gone through it, and gotten like the taste of Revachol. But as it stands, like I have no idea who I would recommend this game to. Like anybody, but also I don't anticipate most people getting very far into it before they got so downtrodden by it that they just stopped.
Yeah, I feel like anyone you'd want to recommend this to already knows about it. It's like it's that kind of game.
Exactly, yes. But yeah, that's it. I'm really positive on it, but there's a lot of stuff that I probably would have done a little differently. Thank you for listening to No Clip this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, immediately challenging my idea that we might not play a game as unique as this one, we're going to be talking about Inscription, a game that I know involves deck building, or at least cards, and I know nothing else about.
All right. I'm usually the one that knows a little something about the games beforehand, but I know even less about this one this time. So
the most important thing to know about Inscription is that everybody says you shouldn't know anything about Inscription. So hopefully it just sort of works out for us.
All right.
Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro, where you can find our Twitter, our Discord, where you can get on, talk about the games, or suggest new ones for us to play. You can find our YouTube, which contains all of our old episodes, including our episode on West of Loathing or on Kentucky Route Zero, or on more traditional RPGs like Final Fantasy X and Xenoblade. Have an argument with that like button.
Try to shoot the body down from the tree so you can ring that bell.
And subscribe to us and also Cryptozoology Weekly. It's a magazine is not in the game. Made it up just now. Here we go again on our own. Podcasting the only way we've ever known. Like a drifter, I was born to game alone.